Good evening and welcome to the March 3rd Naperville City Council meeting. Roll call.
Worley.
Here.
Gibson.
Here.
Holzhauer.
Here.
Jane.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
McBroom.
Here.
Syed.
Yep.
White.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item tonight is public forum. I'd like to remind everyone of the citizen participation rules in the city's municipal code for speaking at city council meetings. Speakers are asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Speakers should be staying on topic and be cognizant of their words. Personal attacks on council members, staff, other speakers, or members of the audience are not allowed. If inappropriate language or comments are expressed during this meeting, you will be asked immediately to stop commenting. Also, for audience members, there's no cheering and no jeering. Actions such as applauding, cheering, booing, or any other noises during or at the conclusion of any remarks made by any speaker are not allowed. If this occurs, you will be asked to stop immediately, and if it continues to persist, I will recess the meeting until the audience abides by the rules in our city code. No speaker should feel intimidated by the crowd. Audience disruption is meant to intimidate those speaking, and I will not allow it in this chambers. Audience members with signs, the signs must not block any other audience member's view, and speakers are given 3 minutes to address the city council. To help speakers stay within the 3-minute time frame, we have a timer located on the side dais to your right. It will give the visual cue when the 3 minutes are expiring. This helps speakers conclude their comments in a timely manner without being cut off. The timer will buzz when it hits 0, and we will alert the timer, or alert the speaker that the time is up. If a speaker's name is called and they are not in the room, we will move on to the next speaker, and we will not go back. Speakers are encouraged to remain in council chambers until the conclusion of public forum. In the event council members want to ask follow-up questions. Mrs. Schatz, please call the speakers.
We have 2 written comments that were submitted to the website and posted under today's meeting. We have 7 speakers in public forum. The first 4 speakers are Matt Marsh, Diana Torres-Hawken, Richard Stark, and John Doyle.
And if you heard your name called, please come to the front row and sit behind the podium there.
The first speaker is Matt Marsh.
Good evening. My name is Matt Marsh. I'm an owner of a townhouse in the 60-unit, 25-year-old Vintage Club neighborhood, located less than 60 seconds drive from the proposed Atlas Apartments development. I'm here to object to the rezoning of this property for such a high-density development as the Atlas on Audrey Avenue. My primary concerns relate to pedestrian and child safety due to the increased vehicle traffic that would be present in our residential neighborhood as a result. I feel that the traffic study that was done and published for this development is deficient. That study focused primarily on Audrey Avenue and a few other major roadways connected to it. It did not study or pay any attention to the impact on nearby residential side streets. Within 550 feet of one of the proposed Atlas development entrances is the beginning of a residential neighborhood street called Blakely Lane. Blakely Lane leads to other 25-mile-per-hour residential side streets that pass through Vintage Club, Mayfair, and past dozens of other single-family homes. People that know this area know that by using our side streets, you can avoid backups at nearby busy intersections. They use these shortcuts through our neighborhood to move between major roads such as Ogden Avenue, Route 59, and 75th Street. As it is, we have a lot of non-resident traffic passing through our side streets to save time, often driving too fast. During warmer weather, these fast-moving cars are sharing our streets with children on bikes and scooters, as well as pedestrians crossing the street. The hundreds of future vehicles that would be nearby at the Atlas would mean that we see an increase of hundreds of additional cars, many traveling too fast, flooding our residential side streets every day while taking shortcuts. This is going to increase the odds that eventually we see an accident involving a child on a bicycle or a pedestrian. Shortly after we moved into Vintage Club 5 years ago, our dog was hit and killed by a speeding driver on Blakely Lane. Every benefit of this development will be forgotten and publicly criticized if one of our hundreds of children in the nearby neighborhood is tragically hit by a vehicle in the future that came from the Atlas Apartments. I want to be clear that I am not opposed to a multifamily apartment development being built there, but I am opposed to one that is 5 stories too tall, taller than any other structure for miles around, is too dense for a residential setting, and that would have significant safety impact on our neighborhood streets. I would propose that the City and Zoning Commission instead approve rezoning for a medium-density apartment complex of 3 stories height versus what is currently planned for an overly dense complex, the Atlas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Diana Torres-Hawken.
Good evening. My name is Diana Torres-Hawken, and I am the founder and vice president of ALMAS, Alliance of Latinos Motivating Action in the Suburbs. I am also a resident of Naperville. Due to recent commentary from City Council discussions, I am here once again to clarify the public record. ALMAS previously addressed this issue in October 2025. ALMAS is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. ALMAS does not endorse candidates. ALMAS does not donate to campaigns. ALMAS does not support political parties. By law and practice, ALMAS is nonpartisan. Our mission is centered on cultural enrichment, youth leadership, development, and civic empowerment. Like many nonprofits, we engage in nonpartisan issue advocacy when matters directly affect the safety and well-being of the community we serve. There's a clear legal distinction between partisan political activity and issue-based civic engagement. Encouraging residents to understand their rights or participate in civic life is not campaigning. It is community education. Elected officials hold a responsibility to ensure that public statements accurately reflect the facts. When questions arise, we're always willing to provide documentation and clarity. That strengthens public trust. What's difficult and concerning is the repeated public characterization of our organization as partisan when the documented record does not support that claim, especially when it comes from this dais. We welcome transparency, we welcome accountability, we welcome objective, standardized criteria applied equally to all SECA recipients. The SECA funds we receive support specific approved cultural programming, most notably Dia de Muertos at the Riverwalk, a free, family-centered celebration that brings together thousands of attendees to Naperville. SECA funds are used solely for event-related expenses, and every dollar and cent is documented in our required SECA reporting. Our partnerships span schools, businesses, faith institutions, and civic organizations throughout the city. Public officials, like many community leaders, regularly attend cultural events in service to their constituents. Their presence does not constitute endorsement, nor does it transform cultural programming into political activity. ALMAS remains committed to building belonging, supporting youth, and strengthening the cultural and civic fabric of Naperville for all residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speakers are Richard Stark, followed by John Doyle and Bruce Jones.
My name is Richard Stark, and I've been a resident of Naperville for 6.5 years. During that time, I've seen many examples of exceptional performance within our council manager form of government. There's a reason why Naperville has such a strong reputation. I've also identified one important opportunity for improvement. I've closely followed the electricity contract discussions for the past 15 months, and throughout that process, I observed that no electricity vision, decision criteria, targets, or benchmarks were used to evaluate proposed options. These elements are essential components of any well-formed strategy. The good news is that my partner, Mike Milano, and I have developed a practical solution that can be started soon. Our proposal includes 2 workshops supported by videos, audios, reference documents, and some individual Zoom meetings with council members. The goal is to develop the vision statement, decision criteria, targets, and benchmarks that will be used to guide the Public Electric Utility Department to identify near-term and future options that best meet our needs. The primary reason for doing this now is that it will enable Brian Groth to evaluate options that can improve performance within the next few years, especially to address potential reliability issues in the ComEd zone. This is an opportunity for you to take the initiative and help Naperville City Council reach an exceptionally high level of strategic leadership. Years from now, when you reflect on your service, you will be able to point to your role tonight as one of the most meaningful contributions you made. You can start by initiating or supporting a new business proposal to put this on the next agenda. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is John Doyle, followed by Bruce Jones, Ashley Pennick, and Julie Carducci.
Yeah, thank you. My name is John Doyle, Naperville resident, and tonight's not going to be about anything utility related, so no worries there. I do want to talk about House Bill 2454 and the city's opposition to it, though. If you're unfamiliar, HB 2454 is pretty straightforward. It's looking to amend the Tort Immunity Act to ensure that cyclists are recognized as intended users of roadways where they're legally allowed to operate. Right now, Illinois is the only state in the country that draws a distinction between permitted road users and intended road users. This distinction allows municipalities to avoid liability when poorly maintained roads leads to injuries for cyclists. The bill is hoping to close that loophole. Now, I understand the city filed its witness slip against this bill in consistency with the legislative priorities that the council voted on last year, specifically the guiding principle of opposing legislation that increases liability. I'm not trying to challenge that general framework, but I would like to ask that the council take a closer look at this bill in particular and potentially reconsider the city's position. This bill was introduced and sponsored by Representative Hirschauer, and its chief co-sponsor is Representative Yang Rohr, both of whom represent Naperville. And it just seems very counterproductive to me to have two of our state representatives pushing for a bill while having our city government simultaneously oppose that same bill. The city's opposition also seems to be out of alignment with the ongoing work done with the updates to the bicycle and pedestrian plan, which is explicitly trying to make bicycling safer in Naperville. So for those reasons, I am requesting that the council consider withdrawing the city's current witness slip that's in opposition of House Bill 2454 until the city can discuss it formally at a council meeting and allow for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Bruce Jones, followed by Ashley Pennick and Julie Carducci.
Hello, Bruce Jones, 40-year resident of Naperville, here to make a recommendation for the commercial business ordinances that Naperville is updating right now and will soon be completing the ask. The commercial businesses, for commercial businesses, we should add the following type of language to the commercial ordinances. During initial construction or renovation of commercial garages and parking lots, add the infrastructure for electric vehicle charging stations while the ground is dug up and the facilities are under construction. This means include sufficient electrical capacity in the breaker panel and install electrical conduit from the panel to the parking area, and this lays the groundwork, pun intended, to install charging stations by just pulling wires through the existing conduit and making electrical connections. Research shows electric vehicles are prices are steadily declining. And in the next year or so, the average purchase price of an electric vehicle will be the same or lower than a gas car in the mid to upper 30,000 range. EVs are already less expensive to fuel and maintain, so as their purchase price continues to drop over the next 10 years, they'll be even more affordable to lower income drivers. So who benefits from this ordinance and workplace charging? Employees is the first group, especially low to middle income workers employed in Naperville, but living in multifamily housing and apartments that don't have charging stations. If you can't charge at home, where's the next logical place to charge? At work, where the car is parked for hours. So they'll be attracted to jobs that offer workplace charging. Second group, building owners and employers benefit. Naperville businesses with charging stations will attract and retain employees, building stronger businesses. It makes so much sense to install the electric capacity and conduit while the parking area is under construction. For a small cost up front to do this, it saves the building owner thousands of dollars later when installing chargers by leveraging existing conduit in the walls and ground, as opposed to paying for costly trenching, drilling, and re-landscaping later. And the Naperville electric utility benefits. Naperville and the IMEA even promote the installation of charging stations through a $500 credit for each charging station installed. Just join the renewable energy program and install the units. They want more EV charging. So I've helped over 20 city and county governments, including Kane County, update their ordinances with such language. Please support this. This is something we really need to do, and I'd be happy to assist. Right now, for the commercial ordinances, if we don't push the envelope, it'll remain stationary.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Ashley Pennick, followed by Julie Carducci.
City Council, Ashley Pennick here. Stretch codes is an issue that was brought up last City Council meeting, the discussion of affordable housing. I have some questions to pose about affordable housing. It is true that it is expensive to live in Naperville. The median house cost in the city of Naperville is approximately $580,000. The median house cost in the United States is approximately $410,000 to $440,000. Let's do some basic math. Let's say a builder is building a house at a cost of $300,000. Then all of a sudden, a new regulation, some type of energy efficiency regulation is made into law. What that means to the builder is that an added expense that has to be incurred into the budget. What does that mean to the estimate for the person who is buying the house? The person who is purchasing the house will more than likely have to put more money in, and how will they get it? Through a loan. This makes housing more expensive. Many of the regulations that are sent forth are supposed to be economically efficient, environmentally. When not enough research is done for this to be made known, doesn't everybody want clean air and water? But what if these stretch codes have some type of environmental impact that could mess up water, soil, and air? Prove me wrong, but isn't that something that we would want to avoid? Think about it. When we put all the salt out in the winter, it makes it so the streets are not as slippery. That goes directly into our water supply. At least where I live, I try to take much of the salt out and put it into a bucket because there is too much salt. Is that healthy? All of the salt going into the water? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The final speaker is Julie Carducci.
Good evening. My name is Julie Carducci, and I'm a resident on Franklin Avenue, immediately adjacent to the Benton and Main Townhome development. I am here to request that council members make a motion to reconsider the February 17th approval, not because we oppose development, but because the approval cannot be reconciled with the city's own municipal code, its conditional use requirements, and the land use master plan. The council cited major master plan's flexibility provisions to justify enormous variances, but flexibility is not a blank check. The master plan states it will not alter or change the existing zoning laws, and it equally requires compatibility with adjacent uses. This project proposes 3,100 square feet per unit, whereas transitional use zoning requires 6,000 square feet duplexes. That's about half the required density. That's not a minor variance, but a fundamental departure from TU zoning laws. And to grant a conditional use permit, the city must find the project will not be injurious to the neighboring property. The testimony of all 9 immediate neighbors regarding noise, loss of light, loss of privacy, and dangerous traffic makes that finding impossible to support. The Karas data center was rejected because the developer could not demonstrate the project would not harm surrounding properties. That is the correct application of the conditional use standard. Approving Benton and Main townhomes with 9 neighbors testifying to substantial harms is an inconsistent application of the same rule. We recognize Karas was a different land use, but the conditional use standard was identical. That standard was not met here, regardless of land use type. This inconsistency is precisely the kind of arbitrary and capricious decision-making that courts in Illinois have overturned. We also asked the council to revisit the 2 required planned unit development public amenities approved by staff. The substitutes accepted were a private driveway with permeable pavers and 4-inch caliper saplings, replacing full-grown parkway trees the developer is removing. On what basis does a private driveway qualify as a public amenity? And on what basis do small replacement saplings qualify as a public amenity? The neighboring residents submitted a written request for reconsideration last Friday, and I'm here tonight to respectfully echo that request in person. We urge the council members to make a motion to reconsider. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for the city to apply its own rules consistently and in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is City Council Public Forum. As a reminder, per the code, council members have 3 minutes to speak during public forum and can speak up to 2 times. I'm going to begin by speaking to Mr. Stark's comments from earlier. I think he's right in that we need to be looking at our electric provider much sooner than we may even be anticipating right now. Under new business, at the end of this meeting, I'll be asking council to direct our professional staff to develop a critical path timeline tied to our current IMEA contract, which expires in 2035. So we will know the firm decision points this city must meet to protect affordable, reliable power at the lowest risk to our customers. We cannot afford to drift through this process. We need a clear roadmap that identifies the drop-dead dates for evaluating IMEA, advancing alternatives, reviewing transmission and capacity risks, and understanding when delays start to cost us leverage, options, and ultimately money. I also want to note that while council voted to pause negotiations with IMEA, that vote did not pause the markets, regulatory change, or the timeline that we are up against. The clock is still moving. And the MISO PJM pseudo tie issue, it's not hypothetical. It's real. It's a real threat that could affect whether IMEA remains a viable option at all. And that's exactly why we should be preserving options, not narrowing them too early. So my request is straightforward. Let's direct our professional staff to bring back a timeline that clearly shows when decisions must be made so this council can act responsibly, deliberately, and on time. That is the kind of careful, responsible stewardship our residents deserve from all of us here at the dais. Councilman Holzhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur in part with what the mayor just said, but dissent in part. So looking at the meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2025, I'm going to actually read the motion verbatim. It says, quote, "A motion was made by Councilman Holzhauer, seconded by Councilman Kelly, to schedule a series of workshops on the long-term energy options for the city of Naperville with a focus on strategic objectives and excluding tactical decisions on a specific contract." And unfortunately, the workshop that we got was the opposite. It was focused on one provider, one contract option, no strategic objectives. The result of that was the waste of the many months between March and June of this year. The definition of insanity is repeating the same mistakes over and over and expecting a different result. So I will be offering as an alternative a proposal to do what we said we were going to do last June and actually follow through on it. With regard to Mr. Doyle's comments, I would actually like to learn a little more from city staff. Mr. Krieger, could you share a little bit about what the city is telling the state and why we're opposing our state legislators on this bill? Mr. Krieger, could I ask?
Mr. Krieger, you want to start?
You know, yeah, that's fine. House Bill 2454, you know, it does make bicycle riders intended users of any roadway or portion of roadway that they're legally permitted to ride, because it will increase liability and risk and cost for the city. That is the main reason that we are opposing. You know, I don't believe that it stands in contrast to the work that's being done by our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, because, you know, those efforts of making the city more bikeable and more safe will continue, and I think are not impacted by House Bill 2454. The real reason is just kind of the increased liability risk. for the
Can you
city.
state, as you understand it, the reason that the supporters of the House bill are supporting it?
I cannot.
Okay, well, I find that problematic. So I would ask that at the next council meeting, you could talk to our 2 state reps that are backing this, ask them why they support it, and see if their reasons are logical. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman White?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to echo also what Mr. Starks had presented as well. I think we, as Councilman Holzhauer said, it proposed to do this earlier last year. I think that's something we should do. I understand where you're coming from also, Mayor. I think initially we need to establish what our vision for the city is going to be when it comes to electricity, to start formulate those strategies. And I think once that has been established, and it should be council-led, from a vision standpoint, we can start putting some milestones and things together, if it makes sense. I think we're kind of getting to the, more the tactical piece of this before we get to the strategic piece of it. So I would agree with that. I think we need to scale it back a little bit, get the basic vision down, and then we can kind of go from there. That would be my proposal with what you had proposed, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, our next item is consent agenda. May I have a motion to use the omnibus method to approve the consent agenda?
I move to use the omnibus method to approve the consent agenda.
Councilman Kelly?
Second, Kelly.
All those in favor sign aye. Opposed? Motion passes 9-0. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilman Kelly?
Second, Kelly.
Mrs. Schatz, please read the consent agenda.
Approval of the regular city council meeting minutes of February 17th, 2026. Approval of the city council meeting schedule for March, April, and May 2026. Approval of an appointment to the Financial Advisory Board. Approval of the award of the RFP for Fox River Commons retaining wall improvements engineering services to Larson Engineering for an amount not to exceed $129,590 for a 12-month term. Approval of the award of the RFP for real-time information center software to Peregrine for an amount to exceed $556,400 for a 3-year term. Approval of the award of option year 1 to the contract for sanitary sewer mainline cleaning to Hare Construction for an amount not to exceed $343,223.84. Approval of the award of option year number 2 to the contract for electrical installation, maintenance, and modifications and repairs to Volt Electric for an amount not to exceed $137,963 for a 1-year term. Approval of the award of option year number 2 to the contract for generator maintenance services to Midwest Power Industry for an amount not to exceed $125,000 for a 1-year term. Approval of the award of the cooperative procurement for electric utility GIS service to Xerox IT Solution for the amount not to exceed $539,000.80. Approval of the award of single source procurement for electric utility furniture to Conklin Office Services for an amount not to exceed $171,240.12. Approval of the award of the work order for construction engineering services Maplebrook Phase 2 water main improvements to Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley for an amount not to exceed $181,800 for a 16-month term. Approval of the award of the work order for construction engineering services Kings Terrace water main improvements to Fairgraham for an amount not to exceed $201,000 for a 16-month term. Approval of the award of the work order for construction engineering services Saybrook Phase 3 water main improvements to Fairgraham for an amount not to exceed $201,000 for a 16-month term. Approval of the award of change order number 1 to the contract for Springbrook Water Reclamation, Influent Pump Station, and South Plant Force Main Improvement Project to CDM Smith for an amount not to exceed $99,000 and an additional 580 calendar days. Approval of the award of change order number 2 to the contract for Trillium Lift Station Rehabilitation Design to Suorba Group for an amount for an additional 365 days. waiving the applicable provisions of the Naperville Procurement Code and awarding the procurement for concrete in-house restoration program to Prairie Materials, Ozinga, and Kendall County Concrete for an amount not to exceed $60,000 and for a one-year term. Waiving the applicable provision of the Naperville Procurement Code and awarding the procurement for hot mix asphalt to Builders Asphalt, Chicago Materials Corporation, PT Ferro Asphalt, R.W. Dunneman, and Superior Asphalt Materials for an amount not to exceed $95,000 for a one-year term. Waiving the first reading and passing the ordinance amending the Class G2 Boutique Market Liquor License in Section 3-3-11-2 of the Naperville Municipal Code by extending on-premises consumption of Cruvenet wine and draft beer to a contiguous outdoor patio connected to the grocery store by an exterior doorway. Passing the ordinance granting a variance for a garage addition at 693 Cottage Avenue. Passing the ordinance approving a one-year extension to the effective period of Ordinance 24-82 regarding a variance to allow accessory structures to exceed permissible rear yard lot coverage on the property located at 923 Watercress Drive. Passing the ordinance approving a minor change to the Iroquois Center PUD and a final plat of PUD for the property located at 1163 East Ogden Avenue, and adopting the resolution approving prior unapproved closed session meeting minutes, designating certain closed session meeting minutes as non-restricted, and continuing to maintain the confidentiality of all other restricted closed session meeting minutes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as read. Roll call.
Worley.
Yes.
Gibson.
Aye.
Holzhauer.
Aye.
Jane.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
McBroom.
Aye.
Syed.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
M1, Councilman White.
Mayor, move to approve the award of cooperative procurement 26-066, 2026 water main lining to Instaform for an amount not to exceed $1,012,941 and for a 16-month term.
Councilman Kelly.
Second Kelly.
We have a motion and a second on M1. Roll call.
Gibson.
Aye.
Holzhauer.
Aye.
Jane.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
McBroom.
Aye.
Syed.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Worley.
Yes. Motion passes 9-0. Councilman White, M2.
I move to approve the award of option year number 3 to contract 23-16 sanitary sewer service lateral lining and vaca T installation to Performance Pipelining Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $1,862,676 plus a 3% contingency.
Councilman White, Kelly.
Second Kelly.
We have a motion and a second on M2. Roll call.
Holzhauer.
Aye.
Jane.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
McBroom.
Aye.
Syed.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Worley.
Yes.
Gibson.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0. Our final item tonight is new business. As a reminder, new business is for items as council's asking staff to bring back on a future agenda or for motions to reconsider past city council votes. New business items, I'm going to offer up the new business item I spoke of in public forum, and that would be to direct our professional staff to develop a critical path timeline tied to our current IMEA contract, which expires in 2035. And basically is a backdater, so we know when we have to make the critical decisions going forward. And I think that would be a requirement regardless of public hearings or workshops or anything else. We need to know these dates, and we need to know when they are drop-dead dates.
A point of order.
Go ahead,
Mayor, we
Councilman.
were told that March 31st of last year was a drop-dead date. What are these new drop-dead dates we're talking about?
I think there's concerns about the pseudo tie.
Well, we were then told August was the drop-dead date. I mean, at what point does a drop-dead date actually mean anything? It sounds like a
I
negotiating
think the guidance
tactic.
of our professional staff on what dates matter do have an influence on how this council should vote and should be taken seriously. So if we want to disagree, or if you as a councilman want to disagree with our professional staff who's advising us we should be making decisions based upon the
Well, I
certain
just
timeline.
disagree that
Yeah,
something's
we're not going to have an
deadline if
argument,
it's-
Councilman. You're out of order, first of all. Okay, I haven't recognized you to speak. Okay? So is there hands in the air to support what I'm putting up? All those in favor signify by putting your hands in the air. Councilman Kelly, do you have a question?
Question/comment on
Go ahead.
what you're proposing. Thank you, Mayor. I'm not necessarily against what you're asking for. I would actually like to see some rough dates from staff because I feel like I've heard differing dates from staff at differing points and at differing meetings. So I would sort of like to have a definitive written set of dates from staff, and to Councilman Holzhauer's point, it may or may not be what everybody thinks is correct. I think it might work in conjunction with what Councilman Holzhauer talked about, so I guess I'm a little bit curious to kind of fully flesh this out before saying yes to one thing or the other. I'm not sure I'm necessarily against either, but I might be in favor of both, if that makes any sense.
Understood. I do think it's important for us to have dates. I think the two could run in concert with each other. We have to have some sort of guidelines as to when we have to make decisions.
If I could follow up.
Go ahead.
If we could maybe have some commentary from either city manager or the electric director, Growth, and in terms of how you envision either or both of the concepts we've heard so far working either together or separate or parallel. Just curious what staff's thoughts are.
Mr. Krieger?
Thank you. You know, the way I would envision it, I don't think it's kind of an either or. I view them kind of both kind of complementary. You know, what the mayor is seeking is really kind of like the reverse timeline working back from 2035. That will provide us some dates, but it would not provide council any direction or information about some of the options that the city would have. And I think that's something important for council to get. So what I would kind of envision to see if it would work for council would be to incorporate the mayor's timeline discussion and then follow that up with a discussion of the non-IMEA options, their pros and cons. I believe that we would be able to accomplish that over a series of city council meetings as opposed to having a separate workshop. And in my discussions with Mr. Groth, thought we could start those in the month of April.
Okay. Councilman Kelly, do you have a follow-up?
Just last follow-up, so I'm clear on the first piece that the mayor is requesting. What would the product of that be? Is this a manager's memorandum? Are you envisioning an agenda item on a council meeting, or what form would this be coming to us in?
I think there would likely be questions, so I think it should be offered at a public meeting where council can ask questions.
Okay, and separate from a workshop, or?
It could be included in the same thing, but I think at some point you have to have a time frame of when certain decisions have to be made.
Yeah, my only thought there is that I think I would favor, at the same time, we've been a little bit all over the place on this issue. I would hesitate a little bit to say, let's have one agenda item at a city council meeting and just on dates, come back later on workshop for strategy. Just seems like they're so close.
As long as it's in a public meeting, that's all that matters, so,
All right,
so
fair
people
enough.
can ask questions, okay? Councilwoman Gibbison.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would also just like to start by saying, while I recognize and appreciate your role in hosting the meeting, I had my light on well before Councilman Kelly, immediately after.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
I agree with you. I think we need a timeline, one that's discussed in open session, and so we're all hearing, the community's hearing. I was discouraged listening to the last PUAB meeting to hear timelines being discussed that were very different from what I've been hearing from staff in multiple meetings across many months. And I think to Councilman Holzhauer's point, you know, we've heard multiple drop dead dates. So I absolutely agree. We need a timeline, but I think we also, to what City Manager Krieger said, I'd like to see staff come back with a timeline that's tied to different options, non-IMEA options. I'm concerned about a motion that's specifically tied to, sorry, how it was worded exactly, IMEA. For example, the pseudo tie is a timeline that's very important to IMEA, but not necessarily a timeline that dictates our decision, especially if our decision is a non-IMEA future. So, I mean, Councilwoman Suppin and I had a meeting with staff today. We talked about maybe a format where staff would bring back reports over a series of meetings, going over our options, IMEA and non-IMEA options, and what timeline would be needed to make key decisions. Kind of a more holistic view. To Mr. Stark's point about strategic plans and Councilman White's comments about strategic plans, I agree, but I think this is a good first step because it makes sure as we're planning our priorities, and I know all of us have different opinions up here about how to weigh different aspects of our post-2035 energy procurement. But if we start by knowing what our options are and what's out there and what our timeline is for making decisions, then as we have the strategic plans where we discuss and debate and rank our priorities, we're making sure we're doing that grounded in reality of real possibilities. So that would be my preference for hands in the air of a timeline, as you suggested, but also a clear outline and open session of what our options are, be it power marketer, be it IMEA, from staff. And to ask, if I might ask staff a question, I believe between our knowledge on staff and the CES report we've already got, staff is already in a position to give us this information, correct?
Mr. Krieger?
That is correct. We feel comfortable with that series of workshops. I'm sorry, we're not workshops, but open meeting discussions during council meetings.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps in a form of a staff report in a meeting, that would be
Yeah, that is what we were envisioning.
perfect. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Jane?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo what Councilwoman Gibson stated. I think for me, the gap in knowledge is understanding options outside of IMEA. And I would love to hear from our experts internally, our staff, on what they believe those options are, and with that reporting a timeline linked to it. Because I do believe there could be options, although when we had asked about that in our previous meeting in January, how much time we had to make decisions, I think there was some mixed dates and some confusion around that. I think this would be a time to clarify that timeline as it is associated with various options. For me specifically, I want to see non-IMEA options. I think we know IMEA, and we've kind of discussed that and gotten to a point where there wasn't a meeting of minds, despite a lot of resources and time being dedicated to it. So hence the pause to allow us to have some bandwidth and room to explore options. And I think this is a great way to explore those options and have a better understanding of what those options are. So in agreement with Councilwoman Gibson.
Councilman White?
Thank you. I agree with the timeline. I do think we need to have some drop-dead dates on when certain things need to take place, so I would appreciate that. As far as the options are concerned, yes, I'd like to see the options, but I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to establish what the overall vision is for what we want for energy. Once we establish that, now show me those options that fit within that vision that the council has come up with. So I would advise us to maybe take that approach so staff can go back and say, well, this is what council said the vision is for what we want. Now let's provide them the options that kind of fit within that vision. So that's would be my proposal.
Councilman Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, sorry for my confusion here, but sitting in on the PUAB board meetings, I don't even know where to start with this. Sitting in on the PUAB board meetings, there have been plenty of options laid out. For example, this year's 2026, if we wanted to build our own solar, for example, I don't know how much it would cost, probably pretty expensive. We'd probably need to say no to IMEA today and start building that now, if that's an option. I guess the decision to pause talks with IMEA had been disconcerting to me, because does that mean not doing anything and then not signing anything, going to 2033, then looking at a power marketer? There have been PPA options that had been talked about at the PUAB board meeting, where we would end up partially going out and then partially doing things in-house. Nobody's brought that up, but they also haven't talked about how that would be done in-house. And then as far as like the strategy, tactical decision, whatever that means, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'm just dense. I don't know. If you asked some of my neighbors, who would barely know that this discussion's going on, they wouldn't know what that means, I can almost guarantee. Maybe they're dense like me too. But that being said, I mean, to me, it's just vague terms. You know, you could, Councilman White and I both work out or whatever. If you said you wanted to squat or bench or whatever, that was our strategy or whatever, you'd have to have some sort of a goal in mind and plan it out week by week, and then go from there and know what you're going to do, what you're going to eat or whatever. Anyway, the point being is the costs have to factor into that. If you're going to say, I want to go completely green or whatever that is, not know how much that's going to cost, that's a pretty important factor. So I don't know. I think looking at the timeline and whatever dates are necessary for what we're trying to do here is an important one. Thank you.
Councilman Alzar.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Wilson, made his comment about strategy. I think Benny and I are both coming from a military background. Strategy is just the military way of saying a goal. And as I've thought about this process, I really think City Council over the past few years, and I'm responsible for it because I was here, but I think as a whole, we have abdicated our responsibility to set a strategic goal, okay? It is staff's job to execute, and what I hear us do over and over is get in the weeds and be second-guessing staff decisions or PUAB decisions. But to my knowledge, no one's ever said, hey, the city's goal is to cut our carbon emissions by 10% or 15%, or the city's goal is to make sure prices don't go up by more than 5%. These aren't super hard concepts, but right now when I listen to the PUAB meetings, when I listen to the presentations, people don't even know what we want. I heard one comment at PUAB, well, City Council wants 100% carbon-free. That's not a goal that I've ever outlined. I don't know if that anyone's, I don't know if that's here's goal. I don't think it's that hard for us to lay it out. I do think if we don't lay it out, that's a real problem. From a negotiating perspective, I think it's a terrible negotiating posture to go to the negotiating counterparty and say, I don't know what I want, you tell me what the options are. Imagine going to a car dealer and saying, I have no idea what type of car I want, you tell me what are the 3 best options for me and I'll consider that. So I am gonna double down on what Councilman White said, and maybe the way we can do this is we will ask for the timeline the mayor's talked about, but I would after that concurrently put my hands in the ask for hands in the air so that we can have a workshop where we once and for all just lay out what our negotiating goals are. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman McBroom.
Thank you, Mayor. Largely, what I've heard tonight, there's some things I haven't liked, but for the most part, I like this discussion. It sounds like we're having a discussion, and I think that's hugely important that we work together on this. So, Councilwoman Gibson, I'm largely in agreement here. Mayor, I think timelines are important. Some of these things with IMEA, the August deadline, that did pass. Can you confirm that, Mr. Groth? That contract's not available to accept anymore, correct?
Director Groth.
That is correct. It's been withdrawn. Okay. So, but we went through a negotiating exercise with IMEA. At least right now, there's a possibility. But these other decisions are not a request by our partners. They are actual market forces, actual decisions. There's going to be a point in time where IMEA has no choice but to remove the option from us. It could be as early as January 27. The law requires IMEA to submit or start with an integrated resource plan. So, but I think that what Councilwoman Gibson is suggesting, hey, let's just see all these options. Let's look at the timeframes on how to implement those different options. We all have an opportunity to ask questions, and I do think CES did a good job of laying out our options and filed with POBB, but I mean, hearing from our staff is something I do think has been missing. You know, you guys are experts and you're better experts than we are, and I'd like to hear from you guys. But yeah, timeline, and then, you know, as far as strategic goals, I don't know, I didn't hear that in the motion. I don't object to those things. I think what you're gonna find is, and I don't wanna speak for staff, but if I were to put myself in their head, there's probably a fear that people are gonna set future carbon emissions goals that box a future staff or box a future council into decisions that may not be possible in the future. So it just sounds like you could get really into the weeds on that. For me, we do have a mission statement that I read that you can read on our electric utilities page. It's cost, it's stability, it's reliability. You know, if council wants to change that, I guess somebody can make the motion that we, you know, those things aren't as important as some other things. So, but, you know, anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. I think I'm fine with with Mayor's motion. I'm fine with Councilwoman Gibson's motion. If you can incorporate those things together, I would be on board.
Councilman Syed?
Thank you, Mayor. So I completely agree that timeline is critical for all of us. 2035 is not too far. And regarding IMEA, we have been talking in this room, another room for last 3 years. And we have talked a lot about that. So I have suggested earlier also in last couple of meetings that we need to look for alternate options. Without any options, I cannot move forward. When we go to a restaurant, we talk to people and ask them, you know, what are the options you have? What are the best food you have? So that we can decide. But here I saw 3 years we have been stuck on IMEA only. So now we have put a pause. Let's talk about options. So my request to the staff will be to bring us some new options, what we have in the market. So based on that, definitely we can take the cost, our requirement, and also then the timeline. So that will really help us to take decision as city council members and as a community. And definitely we can bring this on the dais so that openly, transparently, we all can discuss and see the options, best options, whatever we have, we can take those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say thanks for the clarification there, Councilman Holzhauer, with regard to goals. I would hope that we can keep in mind when we're talking about goals, whatever those may be, that we don't just throw it all at staff and say, oh, here's some goal without keeping in mind whether it's actually feasible. Like if I guess to bring back the workout analogy here, if I told Councilman White my goal is to run a 4.540 or whatever, and he would just laugh, and I'm guessing he'd think that's ridiculous. So wouldn't happen. But and when we're also when we're talking about goals, we're not setting some arbitrary thing. You know, if we're going to go, hey, carbon emissions should be 20% or whatever, I'd say, where are you getting the 20%? Why not 100? So, yeah, but again, I think timelines and goals are all important in this discussion. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I think there's likely some consensus between Councilwoman Gibson's proposal and my request for some sort of timeline that keeps us guided along the way. And keep in mind, my timeline is not specific to IMEA. It's everything and all the different things that are going to affect our decision making. So if we're okay with this, Councilwoman Gibson, are you good with us doing hands in the air for both things combined and see if we can get a consensus among council? All right, council, you got it? Hands in the air in support? We have 7 hands in the air. Okay. Councilman, or I'm sorry, Mr. Krieger.
Thanks, Mayor. You know, lots of different opinions on this. I just want to kind of explain kind of my takeaway and my understanding of that motion is that it would incorporate both a discussion of a reverse timeline from 2035 that would cover all different potential energy options that the city could pursue, and that we would include that with the first staff report that would come back to council at a city council meeting including the timeline, and then we would start with the different non-IMEA options to discuss those. I believe that it would probably take us probably 3 or 4 meetings, or 3 or 4 staff reports during council meetings to get through the different options.
Sounds right. Councilman Alzar?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, with the timeline Mr. Krieger just laid out, I would ask for hands in the air for, once those presentations have been given, for us to have a strategic workshop where the council lays out goals for staff to pursue our energy future.
Okay, and that's a special workshop outside of a normal council date, correct?
Correct, to lay out, if it's 3 or 4 goals, just what those are.
Okay. Are there anybody have any clarification for what the councilman's requesting? Councilwoman Jane?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted a clarification on the timing of that workshop. Would that be concurrent to the reports that staff gives us before or after the reporting?
Councilman Alzar?
Well, that's an interesting question. My preference would actually be before, but if what we just voted on is for reports to start coming in at the next meeting, I'm not sure how that plays in. It could, I suppose,
earliest as possible, perhaps, or no?
I'm open to hearing I see other people are commenting.
Councilman White?
Thank you. I think maybe, I'm going to stand by what I was saying before, as far as options are concerned, because I just think we've got to do the other part before we see the options, so they can provide the options that we've said are important to us. It may be a good start point, maybe what Councilman McBroom said with the mission statement. In taking a look at that, and let's break that thing down, and let's not give it lip service, but break it down to determine what we feel is important. We've got the pulse of the community, and that's why we've all been elected to be up here. And if it's affordability, then let's prioritize that. If it's carbon emissions, let's prioritize it. But I think we need to have that discussion before we start looking at the options. That's my only concern. So I would prefer that would happen before the workshop that Councilman Holzhauer just mentioned would happen first.
Before we go to the next councilman, Mr. Krieger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I would envision for the first staff report, it would not be a deep dive into strategy, but it would include a review of the mission statement and kind of like the direction that our electric utility currently has. So it certainly would not replace a workshop, but it will at least kind of lay out kind of the guidelines and groundwork that staff will be using as it analyzes the different options. So that, that at least gets us, it gets it out in the air and can elicit some initial discussion.
Councilwoman Jane?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember White's comments on strategy and vision. I do think that's important. I think when I'm thinking about the options that staff might provide, I'm thinking about, based on our current need and how energy is being utilized, how would we support that need? What are the models, or what are the options out there based on that? And so that would just be a reporting of what Director Groth and staff provide as to the options. Now, to your point on how we prioritize that, that's where the decision making would happen. But first, the reporting of what even the options are. I think Councilmember McBroom pointed out, it's not to think of it in an abstract way, although I think that exercise can be helpful. But what is actually possible based on how we currently use it and our current needs? I'm interested in understanding what staff's perspective is on that. So I don't see it as conflicting. I don't see the strategy point as conflicting with the options report. And hence my question on the timing of it. I think it could fare well even after the reports, frankly, and that might be in a good place for us to assess and then make decisions based on the options before us. So, that's your comment.
Councilwoman Gibson.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Councilwoman Jane. I think my preference would be for a strategic workshop after we've heard all the options, as I mentioned before, just so that way we're making sure. I think it's going to be the most productive way for us to strategize once we know what the options are. I've used the analogy recently that I'm not going to research a car seat 3 years before I intend to have kids. The market changes, the options are different. And I kind of feel like the same analogy might stretch it a little, but you know, me thinking about pie in the sky, what I would love in a car seat safety, you know, when the car gets hit and an immediate bubble goes around my kid, would be wonderful, but it's not realistic. So I think being able to talk strategy, knowing what our realistic options are, is going to be the most productive use of our time, staff's time, our community's time. So my preference would be a strategic workshop after we've heard the options and the timeline from staff.
Councilman Holzhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of follow-up questions, maybe one Mr. Krieger could answer. So one, I hear the points here, but one concern that I have is last time that we had this discussion, by the time we got to what was supposed to be a strategic workshop, there was extreme time pressure, whether real or manufactured, and that really cut off the ability to have what I thought would be a thoughtful discussion. And so I have this concern. So Mr. Krieger, if we have a strategic workshop in whenever it is, June, July, August, will there be another deadline where we're told that we don't have time to explore other options?
Mr. Krieger.
To the best of my knowledge, no. You know, in discussing kind of this issue with Mr. Groth, probably the longest term option where we would need to have a decision point would be like 6, 7, at the most kind of 8 years in advance of the 2035 you know, deadline. So I am, you know, right now I feel very confident that we would not be pressed with a deadline after we complete our review of all of the options.
Okay. And then just with regard to Councilman Wilson's point about sort of, you know, pie in the sky, running a 4.5, I think there's some football players that run a 4.4, so it's doable. I'll just throw one out. Most of the other communities in Chicagoland have carbon usage at a certain percentage. So clearly that can be done. That might be a strategic goal, right? And I don't think that's undoable for Naperville to be like an average community. Right now, we're far from that goal. Maybe by 10 years from now, we could be at that benchmark. So while it might be my preference that we at least establish some simple thing like that before reports, I'm fine with the plan here. I'd be fine with doing it after we hear the options in the summer. So I'll ask for hands in the air for that.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're talking about doing the strategic workshop after the presentations at city council meetings?
I think that's what most of the council was hoping for,
Okay.
so I'm good with that.
Council, everybody understand what he's asking for? Okay. Hands in the air in support of Councilman Holzhauer's request? All right, seven hands in the air.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other new business? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second, Kelly.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.